Oh, no.
Recording the meeting. Nothing needs to be repeated. The official record will be recorded in minutes, but thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Aaron has gotten through significant wildlife habitat corridor and the lack of invasive species
Yes.
thus far. Okay, please continue, Aaron.
Yeah, so I'll note that in addition to kind of the overall intact forest nature of the parcel, that there is a wetland on the northern end that's I would say quite significant. It's interesting. I'm a little unsure of its origins. It doesn't appear to probably be a natural landform feature, and maybe somebody there knows more than I about it. But my initial guess was perhaps related to railroad construction as kind of a borrow area. But sort of this large triangular swath was carved out of the hillside there, and it apparently interrupted the water table, and that has developed into a really quite beautiful and diverse, from a habitat perspective, diverse wetland complex. It has a lot of kind of this microtopography, open water, pooling water, shrub habitat. It's quite nice and remarkable. So I would certainly say of kind of all of the kind of very notable features on the property, that rises up to the top.
Mhm.
The just off property to the west, the land drops steeply off to the Winooski River and is interrupted kind of off property on that side by a bunch of kind of incised stream channels, similar to what we see on the south end of this property. I've only mapped on here streams that are on the property, but in that area where the cursor is, there's a number of other little rivulet channels that originate off property. But that whole bank area is quite a steep drop off, and then once you hit pretty much the property line, it's a flat terrace from kind of the most of the, I would say, the northern 2/3 of the property. That's significant when thinking kind of about the wildlife movement through this area, and that certainly the easier travel path is on that flatter forested land. And so it's my expectation that wildlife moving through this area, especially on that northern and western side, are going to be utilizing probably the kind of that top edge of that drop off, straddling that western property line.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
Um,
basically a ridge there.
yeah, I think there's probably significant movement as well to the east, across Redmond Road in that swath of undeveloped forest land there. That there's some forested wetland in that area, I believe, and of course that wasn't explored as part of this project, but that swath of forested land there connects to a much larger forest off to the east, and that's going to be a significant connection to that Winooski River corridor for wildlife passing through that area. So in terms of recommendations, as designed, the project is really spanning fully east-west the parcel, and in doing so, that whole flat terrace area. So I think, well, let me start by saying, of course, the project in any configuration is going to negatively impact the habitat and corridor options here. I think that probably goes without saying. But that's not really what the Williston bylaw bases its guidance on. So the question now is how can we best maintain or mitigate the impacts to this this resource. So it's our belief that retaining as much of that western terraced area as possible will be the best alternative for maintaining wildlife movement through this area. At the same time, you want to maintain kind of that east-west swath, kind of in the central portion of the property into that forested area across Redmond Road. In this case,
This is sort of like the main, this is the main recommendation. Aaron, I know you're trying to go through this quickly and I appreciate your time constraints, but can you also speak to the evidence of, there was great detail in your report about visible signs of wildlife using the spaces that you're describing. Can you just kind of give us a rundown of like what species would actually be using this corridor that we should be thinking about in terms of that buffer that you just described?
Yeah, well, certainly there's evidence of deer use throughout the property right now. So they're present and active. We noted coyote tracks in several locations at the north end of the property, and then along the that western side. There was a sign of territorial marking sign from black bear right near that foundation hole. So there are bear present on the site. I don't think this is probably, given the kind of the larger developed nature of the landscape, I don't think this is probably a kind of a primary habitat area for bear, but they will be passing through. And it kind of highlights the necessity to maintain some intact connectivity corridor through here. Myriad of forest nesting birds were observed and or heard, and I think that's it for the actual sign that were noted during the investigation. I mean, we're only there for a short time, but I would certainly expect you're going to see kind of a full representation of some of these, raccoons and skunks and possums. Certainly red and gray fox, both are likely to be present here.
You also mentioned amphibians in the wetland area.
Yeah, so in the wetland area, it's the habitat there is ideal for breeding amphibians. We were past the breeding season for many of the ones that we might have observed a month or so earlier, but good pools of water that persist for extended period of time. So you're going to have, certainly wood frogs, peepers, and some of the other frog species, some of the salamanders. That you I would expect kind of a full suite of the breeding amphibians to be present in that area. And of course, most of those species utilize that surrounding upland forest for the rest of their life cycle.
Before we move on from these corridors, I did want to bring up the site plan to just sort of chat through how topography might affect these. My intent when designing this, I thought the wildlife passage from that wetland to the east through this project to the Winooski was more important than kind of the western along the top of bank. If we were to expand, as Aaron has discussed, we would basically take away all the flat area for that connection from east to west across the property. I just wanted to point that out to discuss with Aaron. I think I agree that there is some passage wildlife going kind of west of the property along the property line, but due to the topography in that wetland, that corridor has already kind of been shrunk. You can notice along the railroad, it kind of is very steep into that wetland, steep on the other side of the railroad. There is a connection from the railroad up into this property. If you pan up a little bit, David, um, which is kind of that what Aaron was discussing, which we are maintaining sort of that width. But I just wanted to sort of discuss with Aaron and with the board, just if we reorient this project as discussed and shown on the HDA, one, I don't know if I'll be able to do that just because of the soils work that I've done. Two, I do think we would end up sucking up we would kind of trade one for the other. So instead of cutting off the already kind of restricted path to the west of this project, we would completely cut off what I think is the more important path south of the project, which connects that larger wetland complex on the other side of Redmond Road over into the Winooski. So I just wanted to sort of get some thoughts and feelings from the board and from Aaron on what you guys think of that, just because that's where I was coming at it when I designed it, because I thought that connection was more important than kind of I don't think there's a lot of, I don't know what animals do. Animals do what they do, but I didn't see a whole lot of where are they going kind of northwest of this parcel. They're kind of wrapping around the Winooski River, which we're staying substantially far away from.
Yeah, so I guess in looking at this, the small slope in and out of the wetland is at the north is not a impediment to wildlife travel. That's a relatively short little jump up and down, and all of these wide-ranging wildlife are well used to climbing slopes and moving across the land, regardless of the topography.
But I thought you discussed the flat area was the area that we would like to maintain, and so that's
yes. So what's
kind of weighing the two.
Right. So what's unique about that on that western side of the property is just the steep slope down to the river that's interrupted by a bunch of kind of perpendicular to slope ravines. And I don't think that's the kind of thing that's going to completely stop wildlife movement, but they'll certainly be moving across the top of that. Lots of wildlife movement studies have shown kind of that path of least resistance. And so maintaining some of that top edge with a buffer so that they're not impacted, pushed off by the sound and the odors and the activity going on at the site is going to be of benefit for that wildlife travel through that area. To the south, there's a much larger area of forest that's left there. I think in walking around in there, the topography felt less of a impediment there. There's several benches. The kind of the swath of movement that is indicated by that white area on that map there is sort of a long contour, and there's benches and lots of kind of places where the topography sort of adjusts and changes, and some areas are steeper and some areas are less steep, and it felt less of a sort of a linear impediment to movement than that steep bank off the western side of the property going down to the river.
I see this recommendation as also being consistent, Greg, with how generally we try to keep the development as close to the road as possible. And this is sort of consistent with that idea, which is as much of the development as you can bring to the road away from this corridor is generally consistent with how we treat every other project that comes into this commission.
Yeah, and all I was weighing is just the corridors themselves. I mean, I feel the southern connection is the better corridor to stay away from, and that's why we designed it. Again, we also found the soils. I don't really think I can move it. Those stormwater basins, we didn't find a lot of good soil south of this project in order to kind of do stormwater and do that sort of stuff. There was also conversations with the DRB about view sheds into this project and restricting those as much as possible. So we also trying to weigh those comments. Um, the other item is also uh, the connection of the roadway to Redmond Road and how that fits in. So, I mean, I do understand the work that's been done and kind of the idea of reorienting this, but I feel like there's a lot of other things to weigh,
Yeah.
and maybe that conversation can kind of push in that direction right now.
Dave, we have a question from Reed.
Or, go ahead.
Okay, it's just a comment, the, uh, those other factors will be weighed in by the DRB, so our purview is just to look at the conservation value of the parcel, and then how does the design impact that, so.
Yep, no, and I understand that, but I've been through enough of these processes that know that having a good understanding with this Conservation Commission always helps the DRB make their decision. So I don't really want to go into a DRB meeting pinning the Conservation Commission against the DRB. And so that's why I brought it up to try to see if we had some way of melting the two ideas.
Yeah. Greg, I appreciate your comment. I think just to keep focused on the HDA for now, we'll have an opportunity to discuss kind of the totality of the considerations that the Conservation Commission has purview to comment on after Aaron's finished. So
I do have a question for Aaron while he's here.
yeah, go ahead.
Aaron, you mentioned some of the bat species that are in the region here and some of the habitat that you saw in the parcel. How would sort of an industrial use in this area likely impact that? How sensitive are the different bat species to noise, light, activity, that kind of thing?
The bat species are going to be most sensitive to habitat loss. So the clearing has the potential to impact roost trees. I think that's going to be the most notable feature that can cause the impact there. Certainly, post-construction operationally, in addition to loss of habitat, you could see some reduction in use of the area. And again, we haven't specifically studied bat use in this area, so this is pretty speculative. But you could see some reduction. Yeah, I think you could expect some reduction in use of the area, assuming that there is night lighting and some level of nighttime activity. If that stuff is reduced, I think that would certainly help the situation. Given the proximity to the river, it's my expectation that bats are probably common here, and that this is including some of the threatened and endangered species. Certainly, I mean, I think it was notable, probably about halfway across the property from the east. The noise from the facility, the CSW transfer station facility, was very notable and present. So there's of course truck traffic on the road that you can hear, and there's dumping. There's a loudspeaker, I think, on the scale there that kind of permeates throughout that kind of eastern half of that northern portion of the property. So it's just illustrative of the fact that kind of as you push more of this industrial activity into this forest, the impacts extend beyond just the clearing, and that kind of cone of influence from all of that sound and activity will certainly have a wider impact.
Thank you. What more should we cover with Aaron? Do we want to talk about the class 3 wetlands? That was a big topic last month.
Yeah, I'll
Let me
just, oh, yeah, go ahead, Aaron, sorry.
I was just gonna say, let me just kind of run through the last couple of, just to very really quickly run through the recommendation thing beyond kind of the overall site redesign. I just wanted to, kind of mention that certainly consideration for invasive species is really strong here, and I think breaking into this forest is gonna create a significant risk of infiltration of invasive species, and any construction activity just generally introduces that, and then creates a disturbed ground habitat that there's certainly a seed base present everywhere we go these days, so that's gonna respond. And so definitely having some kind of a invasive plan in place is highly recommended. And then kind of going along with that sound piece I was just talking about, I really think there would be some benefit of intentional planting design around the perimeter of the proposed facility that would help kind of buffer that sound, and also create a visual buffer for wildlife out in the forest that's remaining. As I mentioned, there's very little understory throughout this forest right now, so visibility is really open, and so any kind of activity is going to be a disruption and a disturbance. Any kind of lighting is going to be a disruption and a disturbance. And certainly that sound carries much easier through the understory without any kind of dense vegetation there. So having some kind of often we see kind of a multi-tree deep, primarily conifer, because that's good through all seasons, creating both a visual and an auditory break around the perimeter there. And then, yeah, just kind of going along with this, with the overall site design, kind of reduction of any kind of unnecessary areas that certainly understand the aesthetic appeal and that sort of thing, but cutting down on any kind of open lawn expanses or that sort of thing will help reduce the clearing as much as absolutely possible. And I threw this in there just as an idea, certainly far outside my area of expertise in terms of how stormwater treatment is handled. But if there were ways to reduce or redesign the stormwater treatment such that they utilize less surface area, that again would be of benefit to help reduce this clearing area.
Aaron, can I ask, since you noted the, sort of surprising integrity of this large wetland to the north, is there, and the general risk of introducing invasives, do you think that, given that there is a buffer strip, substantial buffer here, do you think there's still risk of kind of introduction of a vector for Phragmites or other pretty disruptive aquatic invasives kind of penetrating that buffer?
I do. I think there's a buffer, but it's still relatively close to that wetland. I certainly think I'll say that the portion of the wetland that's to the east, in this case down on the page, kind of off property there, and even a little bit further off there, that big oval swath there just off property is pretty well infested with Phragmites, and that's more of a kind of an open water pond area associated with the stream, and it hasn't made its way up into the forested portion at the north of the property, even though they're connected wetlands. So I think that's a good and optimistic sign. But I would just, continue to exhibit as much caution as possible. Stormwater basins are notorious repositories for invasive species, They tend to be, disturbed and then generally unmanaged after that, and they just are taken over by often Phragmites, but purple loosestrife and other invasive species as well. So that was kind of the crux of that recommendation, was just maintaining as much distance as possible for any of those swales or basins as possible is going to just be of overall benefit to help ensure that invasives aren't readily introduced into that wetland complex.
Dave, can I make one point on invasives?
Yeah.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
We do operate the compost facility across the street. So when it comes to invasives, we do have a real vested interest in keeping invasives off the road as much as possible, so that they don't get into our compost product and spread them throughout the state. Because the composting process does kill off a lot of seeds, given the heat and retention time, but certainly not all of them. Of particular note, poison parsnip, if we get that into our product, that withstands heat pretty well. So we do have a process by which we try to limit the spread of invasives on the road itself. We've gone in either direction on Redmond Road, trying to remove poison parsnip in particular. But we have Phragmites on our landfill. We have knotweed on our property across the street, and we have real processes in place to try to limit those as much as possible. So we share the invasive species limitation desire as much as Arrowwood points out in their HDA. And certainly we'll have a process by which we monitor that, because we do want to make sure that we keep that out of our product. It's literally just across the street. So just pointing that out, that we also share in the concern about introduction of invasives. And likely, given that we'll be trucking in, we're already doing a lot of trucking down there anyway. It'll certainly be during the construction period that we're monitoring it most closely. But even after that, obviously we have a desire to keep that limited. So just wanted to make that.
You got more truck travel coming, so things will get picked up and carried if they're around.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Josh. Great, so I'm just keeping an eye on time, and I think we have an opportunity for some additional questions. If anyone has one for Aaron, but otherwise, I think we've kind of heard the summary, and very appreciative of your time coming to speak about the HDA.
I had a question. Given the sort of summary of the class 3 wetland not being of any particular note or real value, and the general request for decreasing the footprint, we commented on like the sort of, I don't know, it's early, so I'll just say kind of useless nature of carving out this class 3 wetland hole in the middle of the parking lot. What would be the sort of impact, or is that an opportunity to decrease the overall footprint of the property itself? Is there any value to what this project design is, Aaron, for keeping this intact right now? Or could they potentially use that to just decrease the footprint?
Yeah, I would definitely use that to decrease the footprint. That wetland hydrologically doesn't have any significant function on the landscape. So, and really that's the only thing that kind of carving out in the middle of this intensively developed area would benefit. And so I don't think there's any realistic reason to build around that.
So the area is used for stormwater management, and also that stormwater basin, as I mentioned, cannot be moved. So I don't really think, even if we flatten that whole area out, it would just become grass. I can't move the basins.
Are you,
No,
you're referring to, just to be sure, Greg, you're referring to this long linear basin here
yep.
and this basin out here?
Yeah, I mean, the soils out there we had hoped would be very sandy and well draining, but they hold a high water table. The reason those are so large, to Aaron's point, I'd love to make them smaller, but they're actually very shallow. They're only about 2 feet deep, so they're very large, shallow infiltration basins. To further comment on Aaron's worry about stormwater leaving because they are so large and flat. I highly doubt water will ever leave those basins. It didn't leave in the 100-year storm that I uh, had on my stuff, but this on my modeling to the state, but this is the requirement of the state. Some of the other the areas that kind of look like pipes directing directly towards that wetland, those are foundation drains. So that is just water trying to keep the foundations dry and keep from uplift on the building. Um, there shouldn't be any introduction of invasives in that. And also we're 100 feet away from the wetland, which is uh, twice the 50-foot buffer that is required.
Great. Let's just finish up with Aaron here and then we can continue to discuss. Just noting that the agenda here was largely, timing was largely aspirational. Yeah, it's the most important element. So I doubt we'll keep up with this. We probably won't get to the tail end of the agenda. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
So any additional questions for Aaron regarding the HDA?
Thank you for all the detail, Aaron. I've learned some things. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really excellent writing and a good product. Thank you.
Yep.
Great.
Okay, so I think that the reasonable next step is that based on there's no major changes to the project. I think we should just dive right into your staff report. I thought, it was excellent.
Yeah, so Aaron, feel free to jump off and I know you've got to be on your way, or you're welcome to
Or stick around
as long as you'd like. Before we jump to the staff report, I just want to ask Greg
Thanks, everybody.
a follow-up question on this storm basin, because I think there is some friction here between the recommendations of the HDA, which are based on what the bylaw says should happen with development in a significant wildlife habitat area, and what you're describing in terms of stormwater being immovable. So by saying that these basins are immovable, are you saying that this project and the siting of this project was designed around choosing the location of the stormwater basins first and foremost?
That and the wastewater, yeah. It was the first thing we did on the project was go out and dig 45 test holes. And pretty much as you move south and west of southwest, which on this page is kind of to the left, closer to that ditch, the soils get very heavy and very wet. And as you move obviously towards the wetland, same. It's positioned in kind of the only position that I was able to make work. I do have the ability, I did come up with a quick plan after reading Aaron's habitat assessment on Monday about maybe trying to split the difference. I don't think I can rotate this whole project such that he pointed out, but I do think there's opportunity to maybe move the glass storage area on the back and maybe open up that pathway even more. Right now, there's about 100 feet from the edge of clearing to the top of bank. I think I could probably add another 50 feet if we moved that glass storage. Again, that pins me against the DRB who liked it in the back, but I think they would understand. The other thing I can do with that stormwater basin is I could stretch it out. It kind of has the outlet kind of has to stay in the same spot, but I could skinny it up closer in that area and kind of extend it a bit south. If you want me to share my screen, I kind of doodled on it
Sure.
And these were, it's very cartoony, so bear with me on it.
It's fine.
Greg's the cartoonist in his spare time.
I don't know if you guys can see this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So sort of my idea, which I spoke about with Josh and CSWD, was right now we're leaving, it's actually closer to 50 against the property line, almost 100 feet, that top of bank. I haven't done all the grading for this wraparound stuff, but I imagine there'd be some sort of grading in here to get water to move where it needs to go. But I could probably knock the 40 feet up to 75 or 80 feet, which would create that 140, 150 foot swath in there instead of 100. The glass would then move over to this area, which would need a swale to wrap around it into the stormwater basin. Again, and I could maybe try to stretch out that stormwater basin. We found a little bit more soils kind of back in here that I think would be suitable. But once you started getting back in here, kind of the extension of this, kind of everything south of this line was not great.
Yeah, Greg, this is really helpful just to kind of get a peek into in your brain how you would try to solve this type of problem. And I was just gonna say that the stormwater pond being close to that sort of travel corridor that Aaron mentioned along what's at the top of our page doesn't concern me a whole lot. I don't imagine that a stormwater pond would discourage movement of wildlife. But light and activity and sound, I think woods, it's mostly that glass storage that it seems like that would add some benefit to it means some additional clearing on the south or the left side of the overall site plan, but it does widen that north-south quarter along the west side of the property. So this is helpful to see. I think that is a constructive change to at least consider.
This was our best guess to best option to like compromise on the desire to widen that buffer, with acknowledging that we have also done a geotechnical drilling investigation and have found based our structural design off of where we've drilled on that site. So that's the other consideration that we're trying to juggle here is the need to, if we were to shift that on the property, looking at having to do that process again. So trying to skinny up or make that corridor to the west as wide as possible while keeping that location of the actual structure itself. I think there's another recommendation about doing some plantings around the building that we had it within our design at the last time we did this, a lot of plantings. So certainly something we are more than happy to put into place as far as this process goes.
To be fair, it's significantly more than just planting, right? I mean, because it's about creating that auditory and visual barrier.
Understood.
From standing in that corridor area to even being able to like have a line of sight into the parking lot, the glass floor, all of that.
I only say that because it was part of the recommendation and how it was reported.
Yeah. No.
All right.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Um. Great. Any more questions at this moment?
Okay, so Greg, thank you for sharing that. And I think, yeah, I think moving forward, I mean, we'll see, I just put together a set of draft recommendations that's really kind of based, just kind of full value on what the recommendation was in the HTA. But helpful to remind the CC that, you have the discretion, flexibility to modify this however you will. So yeah, Greg, thank you for sharing that. I do appreciate the kind of effort to problem solve and compromise with the findings of the HDA. So let me take back over Sharon.
I was just wondering, like, should we wordsmith at all recommendation 1?
Let's get to the recommendations.
absolutely.
Because we have that opportunity to do that. Yeah.
There was only one change to the findings.
That's definitely the purpose here, so
Yeah.
may.
Let me ask a general question,
Uh-huh.
based on what we just saw. I think we should just pause and have a reflection on, does that change in the glass storage space and what we just saw sort of reflect a meaningful change to the wildlife habitat assessment that we just heard from Aaron?
Too bad Aaron left.
Well,
I mean, at the end of the day, yes and no. Right, so there was a minimum recommendation made in the HDA of 300 feet, right? That's a pretty significant change to the proposed design that would really require a rotation, right? It would require moving the building. Also, at the end of the day, small things do help, and it's not always the case that you can meet recommendations and have everything. I mean, so certainly, like, I think it's just helpful to note for Josh and Craig, like, you know, we want this project to happen. The town is behind it. We also want to do well by the ecological recommendations and
that takes work.
the way that the bylaws are written to protect the, you know, ecological corridors and such here. So we, at the end of the day, that's kind of my take on that, is somewhere there will have to be some compromise. So let's take a look at kind of what the recommendations are as such. And it may ultimately be up to the DRB to kind of make that call. But I think it's up to you right now to decide how you want to word these recommendations, whether you would like to see some further efforts to problem solve and see if there are any other options on the table in terms of what could be done to, you know, widen that corridor in any other way. So in terms of this staff report, I simply updated. All of this should be pretty self-evident based on the findings of the HDA, that really the most significant aspect of everything that has been considered thus far is really the integrity of the corridor, wildlife moving on site. So I simply noted that, you know, the primary finding of the report is that, you know, clearing in this area will negatively impact the significant wildlife habitat areas. That's not entirely unsurprising, but of course, given that we have multiple bylaws, you know, that are written to try to minimize and mitigate the fragmentation that occurs, the encroachment into core habitat. As Dave mentioned, you know, the sort of conservation planning 101 is get the development as close to the road as possible to minimize the encroachment into the habitat. In terms of scenic viewshed, we don't have any additional information. I know at one time there was a hope that we might be able to get out on the river and take a photo, or Greg was hoping to be able to put together a rendering, a 3D rendering of what that site would look like. Fortunately, neither of those efforts materialized. I will note that, you know, just revisiting this, it is a fairly small impact, and the recommendations of the HDA to widen that corridor and minimize encroachment are in line with, you know, avoiding this overlap. So I really do at this point see this as a secondary concern, just my personal opinion. So no additional information on that, but I've not provided any draft recommendation based on scenic viewsheds.
I've been taking looks from River Road since I go that way occasionally, and I agree. I think you might be able to see something, and the more that it stays away from that western border, the less likely.
Watershed health, runoff and erosion control plans. That plan has been provided. This is boilerplate for all development. In terms of wetlands protections, the HDA was pretty conclusive that there's really no grounds to suggest that that class 3 wetland is serving a significant function even on a local basis. So I think there's really no grounds to provide further recommendations based on my reading. And based on Aaron's assessment that were that wetland to be filled in, it would not impact the ecological function. So that is a finding that I added. SWHAs will be negatively impacted by the proposed development. And this is just draft, and this is really your opportunity to wordsmith as a Conservation Commission. So recommendation 1A, as recommended by Arrowwood Environmental, the site layout shall be reconfigured to provide for a minimum 300-foot buffer between the new clearing edge and steep topographic drop-off. Approximately 335 elevation. That's the line that Greg was measuring from when he made those drawings that showed kind of roughly what the buffer width that currently is and would be if the glass storage was removed. By utilizing flat land close to Redmond Road and south currently proposed site footprint. B, if meeting this objective is not possible in practice, the applicant shall clearly and persuasively demonstrate the site conditions and facility requirements that prevent such a reconfiguration, while still providing for the widest buffer possible west of the new clearing edge. So this is where fundamentally this, trying to minimize to the extent that is possible impact really comes down to some level of compromise. If there are site configurations that truly prevent aspects of this project from changing, that needs to be very well understood by all parties, why it would not be possible to meet that recommendation, because it's a strong recommendation, it's a clear recommendation based on the findings of the HDA at this point. I certainly understand that there are site conditions that do require compromise when putting in development. So that was my attempt to capture both aspects of that in one recommendation.
I was just wondering if we should break it into two. Like, should it be like B is if that's not possible, the most buffer possible should be left, and then C if it's not possible in practice at all. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like,
Justification, like a
yeah,
I don't think we need to go into a C because I've already proved that we can do something. So I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to say that.
Should be justified.
Sure.
And like it could be an and C, whatever, blah blah blah. Should be just, I don't know.
mm. I was looking at number 2, and that talks about the mitigation measures, so that's covered there. I mean, I'm fine with A and B the way that they.
Yeah, I'm
today.
I'm okay with it too, but why don't we go through all of them and see if there's any gaps
Sure.
at this point?
Okay. So, yeah, because I appreciate Kim's comment, you quite address as well. So, 2, in the case an appropriate site configuration alternative cannot be found that reduces impacts on SWHAs, the applicant shall make a reasonable attempt to adopt the recommended SWHA impact mitigation measures provided by Arrowwood. Just for plain language, that's referring to these recommendations for audio and visual screening, planting, invasive species management plan, et cetera. Just considering seriously those measures and which ones could be adopted if possible. So shall make a reasonable attempt to adopt recommendations, blah, 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 provided by Arrowwood Environmental under WDB 27.5.7.4, or clearly indicating why such measures are not applicable or not practically achievable. Greg, for example, site requirements that prevent certain stormwater ponds being movable at all. Of course, voluntary adoption of recommended mitigation measures is encouraged regardless. We've talked about, there are some shared interests here in terms of preventing invasive species, spread on site. So that was 2, and then 3, the final plan shall include a restoration and revegetation plan for the regraded clearing along Redmond Road after its completion to prevent the establishment of invasive species. This was something that we hadn't talked about during pre-application, but it was noted by the HDA, when that work to regrade that area does occur, that does end up adding up to, a good opportunity for a lot of invasives to move in along the roadside, if not kind of planned for from the start. And you may already be thinking about that, but I think it was worth noting and worth considering potentially a third recommendation there. So that these are draft, and I'll kind of turn it back to you as an opportunity to discuss and wordsmith.
I have a quick comment and then we'll open it up for discussion. I think on number 2, I don't know why we could actually be stronger on that visual barrier requirement. Like I
I heard Aaron saying it's important, even
Yeah.
if we increase the buffer size there, because of the potential for light and activity even after dark.
Yeah, I don't see why that should be optional, based on, a explanation for why it's not doable. I think it should be doable. It should just be a requirement, like, we don't, the whole point is to have it be sort of isolated, in this clearing with a dense vegetative zone so that, it's less obvious to animals using the corridor. I think that should be more strongly worded. Other thoughts from the commissioners on these recommendations?
Do you want to get rid of like the first clause in the last sentence? Or something like that?
I mean, I think,
I think it could just start with the applicant shall
Yeah.
make a reasonable attempt to adopt the recommended SWHA impact mitigation measures. I think that's
Yeah.
appropriate. It sounds like in a number of those cases, it's something that CSWD shares the underpinning values, from the, there may be certain measures that are more or less feasible, either like technically or financially, but that's for.
I guess I would just strike the last part of the sentence actually, which is or clearly indicate why such measures are not practically achievable. I don't see why they wouldn't be.
Well, I put that in just noting that some of the recommendations I think are not actionable, or may not be actionable, and that is explore stormwater treatment alternatives that use less surface area. And
But we'll also note that CSWD doesn't operate at night. So, I mean, we have lighting, but that's mostly for the early morning. This project will operate from 6 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Lights, we're not intending to keep the lights on all night, sort of thing.
Yeah, and when you go to the DRB to review our recommendations with them, it'll be important to share those factors, like when lighting will be on, whether it will be motion activated or whether it'll be on a timer and so on. Because they're gonna be looking at recommendations and trying to figure out are you meeting expectations here? Is this something that's aligned?
Yeah. So I think it is useful to keep that in just because, I mean, maybe it doesn't need to be stated, like, either way, when you go to the DRB,
I guess maybe then that is a general statement about all of the recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
I view that the buffer plantings to be very important, and I would like to see that reflected in this final site plan to really show exactly how that buffer would be presented within the footprint. So I guess to me, that's what I would like to see specifically on the site plan as a very important piece of that habitat disturbance assessment. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
We're not gonna see this again, right? This is gonna go, DRB will be the one who will kind of look at these recommendations and then look at the final plans. So
Yeah.
we have to make sure that whatever we put in here, they feel like
Exactly.
they can interpret and
Right.
judge.
That's why I think being specific on that point would be helpful. Thank you, Reed.
Yeah.
So I have two quick questions for Greg and Josh. So, the comment about, for the recommendation to eliminate unnecessary features such as large lawns. I know looking at this site plan, most of those areas that look like lawns, or at least a number of them are designated for snow storage. Let me see if I can find, yes, snow storage, snow storage, snow storage. I think,
That's the biggest one is page bottom left.
Yeah.
but like here,
Bottom
right?
corner.
Yeah.
Just sort of
Yeah.
entrance
So
design.
that one's certainly hard. I mean, there's certainly an opportunity to do some smaller plantings, but the bottom left corner of the building is where our scale attendant works. And so that's a sight line to the scale itself.
Here,
Yeah.
okay.
So that
Oh, right, good, yeah, this is.
there's an opportunity for some, I would think, scattered plantings, but we do need that sight line from that corner of that building to the scale itself.
I mean, we're not talking about plantings within the footprint.
I
Oh,
said
yeah.
that's what David would.
Oh, yeah, so I was just saying, so there's this recommendation here that says, reduce clearing by eliminating unnecessary features such as large lawn areas.
Right.
And I just wanted to clarify that, was this,
That is all lawn.
yeah, is any component of it aesthetic, or is it all functional? Like, could it be shrunk at all?
I
It can
I don't think from a turning radius of vehicles, I can get the roadway any closer to the building without them being able to turn into the building and have it function. So and then as Josh mentioned, you need to see those sight lines. So the roadway separation, the scale separation from the building needs to kind of be there.
Got it. And on this side, for example, just seeing this, here's the edge of clearing and then there's, trees planted. Is that serving an aesthetic purpose? Is that serving a snow storage purpose? Is that an area that could, some minimal clearing could be scaled back?
Yeah, we were going to use that area for construction staging, but also just regrading to make sure the water went in the right direction. You can kind of see a few contours there. I was trying to make sure off-site water doesn't go into the storm basin. But instead of kind of making it flat, open area, I could berm it a little bit more and reduce it, and we could try to find elsewhere to stage.
Okay. Yeah, or if you are gonna clear there, to use that cleared strip for any
Plantings.
planting,
Right.
to meet the visual and sound.
Yeah,
barrier.
and obviously this, this site plan will be changing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
so that area
that'll
will be
glass
storage.
storage. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Will be bermed on that side
Okay.
anyway,
Yeah.
and so that'll be shrunk as much as possible.
Fair enough. So I was just asking that because my reading of this is that recommendation is largely unactionable because there are not really many unnecessary
Aesthetic large
features.
grass areas.
So
So Dave, I'm gonna make a suggestion that we add, either a 2A or a new one, that just basically says the final site design shall clearly mark, plantings that will serve as a visual barrier between the core habitat area and the project itself.
Visual and acoustic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Visual, acoustic. I also would like to see the final site design reflect the light barriers in the evening, which sounds like it shouldn't be a problem. And it sounds like they're not gonna have spotlights going 24/7.
Definitely not.
So I think that if that is also reflected in the final plan. And maybe that's covered by existing too, and we don't need to worry about it, but I definitely think that the first one is important to add.
So
We did-
sorry, go ahead, Greg.
We did include a lighting plan as part of our submission. I don't know if this
Okay.
commission has taken a look at it yet, but it doesn't really extend. Its intent is to light up the pavement. Downcasted, not really reflect into the woods. And I think that
If you have the planted visual barrier, then obviously those remain standing, all year, all day. So then hopefully those
Yeah.
lights will be mitigated by the visual barrier.
I'm not sure I am
it would be
plans to know how to interpret the lighting.
Yeah.
it would be in the architectural plan set, David.
Okay.
Very end of that. I don't know if you have that open. If you
Is
don't,
that part B? Yeah, that might be okay. I'll just leave that.
Yeah.
Maybe a sentence like, well, I didn't speak here. just minimizing lighting whenever possible, because I know there's probably normal times, but if we could even reduce that further, that'd be great.
There's
Yeah.
even like emerging research on like the color of lights, like replacing white with
Right,
amber and red.
Are we going back to sodium?
There's like we have colleagues who are doing this in the national park and it makes like a huge difference. It's fascinating. National parks, as if I said it as if there's one. There are many, obviously. At the moment.
Okay, so just to kind of finish this point, so we're gonna make a in terms of what was drafted here, we're fully eliminating the first clause and starting with the applicant shall make a reasonable attempt. Is your recommendation, Dave, that becomes 2B? Or is that is 2A and there's a 2B that says final site design shall clearly mark buffer plantings?
I think it's like a standalone thing.
Standalone, separate.
Yeah.
Recommendation.
Yeah, I think it could come first and then what the current two could be to cover all other recommended
There you go.
aspects. So
That works.
So a new number 2 that is the recommended vegetative buffer for visual and sound. And then bump what's currently 2 down to be making reasonable attempt to adopt all other recommendations.
Yeah, and I agree that first clause you don't need that.
Okay, so my thoughts here, are there any other substantial changes that are proposed? Here's my suggested plan is that we thank Josh and Greg for their time. We can move on to some other items on the agenda. And I will draft up what I think those changes are, and you can vote on approving those at the end of the meeting, and I'll send those out to all parties with an updated version of this, if that sounds reasonable.
Yes.
I did have one more quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Does the project have the ability to ask for rebuttal questioning of Arrowwood? Because I did think the conversation about flat area and mitigating or trying to keep as much of that flat area open, but then when I brought up that I was trying to keep the flat area open south, it was like, oh, that's not as big of a deal. Just seemed a little contradictory to me, and I didn't know if there was an ability for Aaron and Arrowwood to kind of comment on the ability to push into this flat area opposed to pushing into the other area, where I think the connection for that sort of circulation of plants and animals is a little bit stronger. I just don't understand what animals are kind of going around northwest of this project on those steep slopes to begin with.
What I would say is I hear what you're saying, and also, there's a reason we hire qualified wildlife biologists to perform the HDA as a third party.
Yeah, no, I understand that. That's why I'm asking, is there a position that we can ask?
Back and forth between non-experts. So
would that result in a significant change either way? Right? Like it sounds like the site plan is fairly constrained, so like would a different determination not result in?
Well, we're being asked to move into a flat area on the other side, opposed to removing the flat area on that side. So the change would be just kind of taking one area that we said is very necessary and swapping it for another area that we're saying is not necessary, but it's very similar.
I don't agree with your assessment, Greg, and that is, if we look at what's been proposed, what has been included is the north-south corridor, right? The site stretches nearly the full width of the property, and as Aaron explained, this area here, although there is some micro topography, it is still a viable east-west corridor. Even if you shift the glass, and even if you were to rotate this, Aaron did not describe evidence that would include that east-west parcel. So in terms of an opportunity for
Well, the rotating it would push the project completely up to the side of that bank, so there would be no flat area left at all. If I took that entire project and rotated it, you can see what it would look like. It'd be right up against that bank. There would be no flat area left south of the project. It'd be right on
But the comment about flat area was not with respect to east-west movement. That was with respect to north-south movement. That, you know, the way that the wildlife biologists, trying to find a picture here that reasonably shows us, interprets, you know, the likelihood and the sign of wildlife movement north-south in this area is that this steep, heavily ravined area is suboptimal. It's the path, it's not the path of least resistance versus this flat area here. What we're talking about here in terms of the east-west is if this project were moved, you know,
it's the same slope though.
Fully in recommendation of, like, if we were to take this recommendation at face value, then this corridor, yes, that would be taking up more of that flat area. But there was no recommendation or no suggestion that that would interrupt wildlife movement in the east-west area to the same degree, because there's still opportunity. So I do hear what you're saying, but there is no evidence that has been presented that this passage is significantly more valuable than this north-south passage, and that what has been presented to us is the mitigation measures for this north-south passage are the concern here. So.
Yeah, it's well said, Dave. Thank you. So let's get back to the recommendations, because I don't think we want to reopen further discussion on the placement. It doesn't seem like it's productive. So the plan is for you to, we do have to move on to some other agenda topics at this point. And the plan is for you to rewrite the number 2 recommendation, drop current number 2 down to number 3, and then share that with us. And we'll vote on that at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. It doesn't sound like there's going to be any substantive changes to the number 1 or number 2 other than the removal of that first clause. So is there any other opportunity or need for CSWD to ask questions or inform this at this point? Okay. Then that's the plan, and we'll close this agenda item.
Great. So I'll just say we'll send the recommendations out, the updated staff report to Greg and Josh after those are approved. And just in terms of coming to the DRB, you know, for Greg and Josh, I think this is, you know, it's largely going to come down to your approach to this 1A and 1B. You know, the straightforward recommendation is to make sure that that buffer or impact to that wildlife corridor north-south there is minimized to the extent that that is possible. And so that's really going to be what you're bringing to the DRB, is saying, this is what we think we can do to meet this recommendation. And this is why we think, you know, if not possible, this is exactly why we think that is not possible. So I just want to make that clear for you in terms of what the outcome of this conversation is today and going into that DRB meeting.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Thank you all.
Okay, let's quickly go through the minutes and then move on to the main topic. Well, that wasn't the main topic.
The other topics.
The other topics. I did not, oh, blessedly, the minutes are very short. So, thank you, Dave.
So I'm just going to stop screen sharing so I can do this, these edits.
Great. I don't think we need screen share at this
Okay.
point. Yeah, thank you. Okay, any prior attendees, to make a motion for approval of the minutes?
I'll move approval of minutes as drafted.
Thank you, Reed.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Laura. We have motions. All in favor? Aye.
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 And does Lynn need to
Yeah, I wasn't here.
abstain here?
Yeah. So
I'll abstain.
Do we have a quorum?
for this motion, I think,
With abstentions, you're okay.
yeah. Let's just say they're approved on a
Yeah.
slim margin.
4 people voting, which is a quorum for.
Well, yeah, well, 3, you, me, and Laura.
Oh, did Eric also say?
Eric wasn't.
Yeah, but it's okay. I don't think abstentions.
Oh, abstentions
Yeah.
count in the vote total.
Yeah.
Perfect. Let's do it. Approved. Welcome back, Kim.
Yes.
Farewell, Gary. Thank you, Eric, for bringing scones in.
Yeah,
And
sorry, they were.
I'm gonna-
late getting out of the oven.
dive in on these guys.
No, that meant that it was still warm.
Yeah,
Which
that
was
was
great.
Nice to have one.
Oh,
Scones
I
are
mean,
like my favorite.
Well, yeah,
I
they're.
was like, why did I not get a box? And I.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Great.
Yes.
They were made special order for this celebration.
That's the Eric special right there.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Around. I don't know.
Yeah, we used to do breakfast
Yeah, every
treats
time.
more often, but
Pre-COVID, it
we've
was
got,
like, it
like,
was just signed.
yeah. I'm kind of glad I found a sign, but I also miss that sometimes, so, yeah.
So, Gary, Dave and I have something up our sleeves for you later this
Oh,
year.
no.
Later this year.
It's gonna take a little time, but expect an email from us.
Okay,
Yeah,
I will. Thank you. Thanks in advance.
And you're not going away, you know, if you ever want to come back first thing in the morning
Yeah.
on Wednesday.
Yeah, heckle.
Or,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yeah, if we're gonna do site visits and stuff.
Public
right?
comment.
go for a walk in the woods.
Yeah. Oh, it's good fun. Yeah. It is kind of bittersweet. I've been doing it a long time. but
Yeah,
it's-
how
Thanks.
long have you been on the?
I don't know, I think it was like 92 or 3,
Yeah, so-
so
Unreal.
over 30 years.
Yeah.
Have they always been at 7 AM? Too?
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
god.
And we used to have to write our own notes too, back,
Yeah.
you know, our summary.
Your
notes.
secretary
We'd
had to-
assign,
yeah.
each one of us would take a turn.
Back before we had AI
Which
and
were often written
Staff
like
support.
at midnight the night before. Particularly by Eric.
Yeah.
did I say that or did? Oh,
But it is,
Yeah,
it's,
so-
it's been a really satisfying committee to be on, because it's
Good.
different, it results in conservation and. You know, minimizing impacts and stuff like that, which is kind of what all of us believe in.
What's the most controversial project you were involved in?
The glacier one was pretty controversial.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Not like Finney or anything like that?
Yeah, I wasn't heavily involved any more than anybody else in those. I mean, they've been, I mean, this was interesting today watching the engineer questioning the wildlife person. I felt like saying, well, you know, we didn't question your assessment that you needed this size building and this size thing, you know, so we have to depend, like you nicely did.
Yeah, well done.
To point out that, you know, we can't question all the experts, otherwise we'd never get anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to bring this up, but every time that it has been discussed shifting the site plan, Greg has given a pushback with a different reasoning.
Yeah,
Last time it was, we want to preserve that site for future development. So I
Yeah,
didn't
right.
want to really entertain that, you know, non-expert pushback on the findings.
Yeah. and the
we get that.
excuse of, oh, we can't go back and remeasure things, sure you can, you can spend more money and tell us
Yeah.
what a better answer is for doing.
Or you can go to the DRB and say it's cost prohibitive for us to go
Yeah.
back and redo
And
this
then
piece.
they
and
may
go
turn
over-
you down.
Or you can find a site that's not
The-
second growth woodland
Yeah,
that you
right.
need to clear cut 9
Strong
acres.
wildlife.
Yeah, it's like-
Yeah.
I mean, reading that, I was in shock, like they can't find concrete anywhere else in Chittenden County to
Yeah.
do this in, like they. Alright, I had no sympathy either.
I mean, with this site, I do sympathize. I think it is there's a lot of different factors that go into this. This project's been in development for a long time. They've already been turned out on site. Like I do sympathize with the challenges of putting up a facility like this.
Right, like.
But also,
Yeah, it's not kind of not my problem. Like,
Right, maybe this isn't the site for it
I
either.
Yeah.
have full faith that Greg is a good engineer and could problem solve some of these challenges
Yeah.
if willing, and if there was a longer project timeline, but I know, it's a rush. Understand that, but I think it is good to be firm on some of this and.
this went out for bond.
Yeah.
This went out for bond and they have no idea what they're doing. That was kind of my takeaway of it. Like, how did they get a bond approved for this? With no plan for how to actually build it.
Well, the bond was after they thought they were gonna use the other site.
So why isn't it re-out for bond? Like, seriously, if they put a new bond out that said, we're gonna clear cut 9 acres of Winooski River Forest in order to build a glass crushing facility, would that get approved? I don't think it would get approved. I wouldn't, I mean, I didn't vote for it the first time.
We are recording.
Okay.
Okay, hot takes appreciated. But we also do.
I know it went too far, but you know what?
Just,
I'm just a volunteer, so I don't care.
just gonna say,
Yeah, they wanna use-
There's like definitely an AI search that's like, please
Yeah.
find every comment that immediately precedes we are recording.
The other thing about that conversation I wanted to point out is that and this is something that we know we need to get better at, but it's like, how does our input help the DRB make good decisions?
Yeah.
And the DRB is responsible for enforcing all bylaws, including the conservation ones.
Yeah,
So we're not the enforcers of the conservation bylaws, we're the ones who are helping them interpret them.
Yeah.
And make recommendations on how to optimize the design.
yeah,
Yeah,
maybe we
they-
should be writing like the recommendations in a way that says like, in order to conform with. The
I do know
applicant
that-
shall, or like something, like you had, like the clause that we're deleting, I think actually maybe
Yeah, had a bylaw number.
had a by, so like if there's a way to like.
Keep the bylaw.
Keep the bylaw number then, yeah.
Yeah, that is something the DRB has mentioned in the past, is that it is helpful when we can draw a straight line from
Mhm.
an issue to a reason that it's a problem. And what's recommended to fix it, so that they aren't trying to make up like, well, which bylaw is that really an
Right.
issue with, and
Yeah.
how does the recommendation actually fix the problem, and.
I agree. As a practical point, like our job here in the whatever capacity we can is to say, in order to conform with these bylaws, it has to meet this standard. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't, and that's on you to either enforce or not, and
Or compromise, because
Yeah.
there's compromises needed sometimes, so they could say, well, it's a judgment call whether it complies, and here's what we're gonna do. Yeah.
right, which at the end of the day is like, when your language is to the maximum extent possible, or to, then that's really what it comes down to, is does the DRB feel satisfied that they are doing to the best extent possible?
When someone is clear cutting a large parcel like that, do we make recommendations on when they do that so as to not disturb nest birds and?
They typically wanna do it when the ground is frozen anyway,
Mhm.
because it's really hard to get machinery in and out when it's wet.
However, like the seasonality of that is shifting, like we're seeing loggers working at times of the year that have not traditionally been.
There's also less frozen ground.
Right,
Days of
that's
the
why.
year
Yeah.
anyway, yeah.
And
It's a good
people are
question, though.
choosing like late fall,
yeah,
because it's like,
dry.
yeah, it's like dry and not frozen, whereas
Right.
like spring, which used to be frozen and people were working in the woods, now it's not frozen and muddy.
Mhm.
Like
Interesting.
late fall would give the flying squirrels a chance to find a new place or.
So we do have a new member, so let's welcome our new member.
Welcome,
Hello.
Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Sorry you got thrown into
Yeah,
the pit there. That was a challenging
First
review, yeah.
I think my first one was probably Glacier. actually.
Yeah,
It was
just like
like
right around then.
couple
You're like, what
years
is
ago.
happening right now?
Yeah. Do you wanna introduce yourself maybe to the commission and who you are and why you're here?
Yeah, sure. I'm Lynn Blevins. I live in North Williston and moved here in 2002. I really love the forest behind my house. I also, my husband and I have a woodlot in Northfield that we manage, that we just put in the forest reserve category under current use.
Yes.
I mean, I do have like a soft spot for forests, so this was pretty hard to hear.
Uh-huh.
And just, I'm a member of Sustainable Williston. And, so really enjoy just engaging with the town and thought it was time to kind of step it up a little bit.
And your background is in environmental health, right?
No, it's it's in public health. I worked in environmental health, infectious diseases, and emergency preparedness. So kind of a general epidemiologist.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's great. Welcome.
I also don't think have we had anybody on the commission from North Williston? I can't think.
What part of North Williston?
The part where people slide off the road.
Okay.
Down, yeah.
Got it. Over by Williston Woods.
Yes,
Yeah.
just north of Williston Woods, just past
Yeah, okay.
that. So before it opens up to by the train tracks.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be, where I live used to be a sand pit. And then people we bought the house from had bought that land and there's 2 houses there.
About a year ago, we got a report of a big cat using one of the culverts there as a corridor. I think it was Simon who sent that around. Footprints, right, of the cat.
Of a bobcat?
Yeah.
It must have been a large bobcat. I mean, there was a Canada lynx that was spotted in Vermont, but I don't
But not.
think that was here.
No.
It was more down like, say like Jen's kind of area anyway.
I have so much experience with large cats now after.
Out west.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ben was stalked by one at one point.
Yeah.
There were like multiple sightings in towns while we were living there. And then like one time the kids were at ski group and there was one just like cruising around and I was like, do not feed without.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
I saw a big cat in Catamount during the pandemic, very early in the morning.
Yeah.
Oh, well, welcome.
Thanks. I've seen everything in not moose and not a bobcat, but otherwise. Coyote, fox, bears, like.
Yeah, this sort of like forested strip along the north edge of Williston that we were just looking at the west edge of, you're sort of part of the east.
And you also have done a lot around like ticks and. Right, like, don't you have like an interest in, am I making this up? I feel like we talked about this one time, that you were like.
Yeah, I mean.
You've been interested in keeping ticks off of yourself.
Like in like reducing their numbers or right, like, or like monitoring the spread, did I make this up?
I work at the health department in infectious diseases, so like.
There's a lot
There's
of tick borne.
Like,
Yeah.
I know about ticks.
I feel like we.
But I haven't actively worked on.
Okay, maybe I am inflating a conversation.
Well, you have had a
Tick bites.
very adventurous 6 months. So welcome.
No, I feel like we were on the bus coming home one day from UVM and like.
We were talking about ticks and the preventive, the
Yeah.
one dose of doxycycline.
And maybe
I
I just like
know
made
about
up
them, we
that you
probably
did a
just-
project at work, like my brain added detail or something.
Yeah.
No, it must have been the enthusiasm with which I spoke of ticks. There are a lot of ticks, like if anyone wants to do a study that like in North Williston has a lot of ticks. Like I'm never gonna get a dog that is not white, like that is, there are so many ticks. Oh, and I had anaplasmosis, maybe that's why
Maybe
you're thinking that, which is a tick born.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is dramatic illness.
we all need guinea hens.
Yes, I was gonna say releasing guinea hens would be the way to deal with that, and opossums too. We can breed
Yeah.
opossums.
Perfect.
I have an opossum living underneath my deck.
And you want it
And I
there.
want it there,
Yeah.
very much so.
They eat
Yeah.
thousands of ticks.
That's awesome.
I have heard that there's been some evidence that sort of common understanding that possums eat lots of ticks from the environment may be.
Oh, no.
Simply
no.
that they do eat lots of ticks, but they eat lots of ticks because they pick
Yeah,
up lots of
yeah,
ticks
yeah, yeah.
and they groom themselves. They're not actively seeking to.
Okay, guinea hen. Guinea hens.
No, but I mean, they're still taking it out of the environment, yeah.
But yeah, maybe true, maybe we just,
They're not hunting
you know,
them.
roll some
This-
possums through the woods.
Well, they are, they're just like,
just-
they're like hunter gathering.
Yeah.
Fair enough, hey, okay, I rescind my statement.
Just the less.
I respect the strategy.
I'm not a wildlife biologist.
We saw an opossum on our parcel just right over here I don't remember ever seeing one on our actual land the other day, and it moves way faster than I thought an opossum moves. I don't know if anybody's ever really like watched one, but I tried to get a picture, and before I could even get my phone out, it was halfway across the lawn, and it was like going this way and that way and all over the place, and I was like, whoa, I thought they were gonna be like moseying. But they can apparently move quite quickly. It's surprising.
A successful strategy in the wild, it'd be.
Not being slow
Yeah,
and-
yeah, exactly, to not be sloth like. So welcome back to everyone, farewell to some, sorely missed, but great work, thank you, Gary.
I'm gonna actually take off because I got
Please,
another.
You got things to do.
Yeah.
Thanks for having some
Yeah,
carbs with us.
thanks, Aaron.
and Lynn, you're coming in a good time because Gary and others we've been working on welcome, trying to figure out what needs to be included in a welcome packet so you can get up to speed, so.
I think that
we
would
would
be part
also
of the
love your help as you try to figure out like what's confusing and what makes sense to help us craft the right things into that.
Careful, yeah,
Good luck.
there's a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Gary, we'll be in touch.
Let's do some weeding again sometime.
Yeah, sure, let me know. Take care. Good to see you again.
Bye-bye.
Dave, let's get your
Okay, yeah.
planner
let's-
update.
let's-
It's like,
Oh,
sad.
So let me just give a very brief,
Like,
planner update, and then we can jump back into the wordsmithing and take a vote to close out. So I will just say, Eagle projects, I'll skip that for now, nothing, those are ongoing. So there is an Allenbrook Bridge conceptual site plan that I shared on the agenda. I would love to discuss it more. I don't think we really have enough time to discuss it in full. I'll just note that if I might share my screen here.
If there's anything that we need to vote on, we can kick it to, or then we can talk about it, but if it's just for FYI, we can also get into the.
Well, so it is for FYI, but it's also for, I think as we get closer to implementation, I think it is important for the CC to weigh in on the design. And whether you think that it will accomplish, our objectives out here. I think my chief concern is the long-term viability of
I agree.
kind of blocking up that channel. And whether that is worthwhile or whether it'll just be kind of erased in the next big flood. So some of this is, what I'm trying to do right now is schedule a site visit, an official site visit with the state representative of the stream alterations program and Tina Heath from the wetlands program. The 2 out of 3 of the big permitters, and the third one has decided that the impact will be small enough that Army Corps doesn't need to actually make a site visit, and they can do there's sort of like a self-permitting process we can go through, so that should be a little easier. But I think getting wetlands and stream alterations on site with this conceptual plan in mind, I think they'll be able to take a look at it and say, we think this is doable or not. But I just wanted to sort of put this on your radar that this is kind of the direction the engineering team is going right now, proposing armoring the bank here. And the reason is to prevent the natural curvature of the stream from just continuing to erode the base farther and farther underneath the wooden footbridge.
Because the natural progression is eventually you're gonna get an oxbow, right, on the upper right,
Yeah,
where it does already 180.
right,
Eventually it's just gonna cut through there.
but that could be quite a bit of
Possibly,
time,
yeah.
right?
Where's the river channel in this? There's all kinds of.
Yeah, this is a little
wild-
upsea, so this is the
Yeah.
main river channel. Yeah.
Main river channel.
Okay, thanks, Reed.
Yeah, and then this is where it broke through.
Right, it's actually right here.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, further to the left, but yeah, this where it broke through, basically directly underneath where the platform turned into the boardwalk.
I do think that we could have a future meeting that was like committed to this.
Yeah, and I'd like to do a site visit for sure.
Yeah, so
I would
anyways, I
think,
just wanted to
yeah.
put that on your radar. And then I'll just say real quick, so pollinator garden and trail counters, when I looked into, we talked about those both in terms of, you know, could we use some remaining fiscal year 25 budget? When I looked into both of those items, they both kind of warranted just more consideration than more consideration, discussion, the amount of time we had. So I think they could still be worth funding in the future, just it wasn't the situation where we could quickly take some leftover funds and, make these things happen.
I have
But
to go get my kids, but I have two things about the trail counters real quick. One is that I have a USDA project and that involves putting trail counters out at mountain biking sites across the northern forest region. And we're broadly stop going all the way to Michigan, which is like, don't worry about it. The fact that that's not actually outside the actual geographic
I was
region.
gonna say, it doesn't say nothing.
So there may be an opportunity to use those in Williston. Catamount recently joined Bike Borderlands, which is convened by the Northern Forest Center, so I think there's like an argument to put them there. They're just like, if this committee is like, we'd actually really love to know who's there. And then the second thing is, I think it is possible for the town to apply for a dashboard from Strava Metro. I don't think it's possible, it's definitely possible. As long as there's an argument that we're using the data to make decisions about equity and access, like, oh, we want to know which trail networks are most accessed, what parts of town might need, blah, 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 blah. And it would be broader than trails, so you would get data that could also be used for like bike lanes, etc. It's not representative. It only shows you broad trends.
Walking, running, biking, cross-country skiing.
You can't even get cross-country skiing. It's really just pedestrian and bike data right now. And it's heavily skewed towards white men. Like that's who's used, the majority of people who's using the Strava app. But it is growing. It is like every year it's better. The other thing is it batches people in 5, so you can't be like, oh, are women accessing different parts of town, like feeling less safe, blah, blah, blah. You can only see like broad spatial info, but it could be super useful and it is free, which trail counters are not.
okay.
Okay.
That's good to know.
Thank you, Kim.
I'm gonna go get my kids.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so that I'll just stop there real quick. There is another, we can work with town plan stuff later.
Yeah. For the-
Nice to see you all.
Yeah, great to see you.
Pollinator garden, I would just noticed when I was on my run last night that there's poison parsnip for one that around
Yep.
there now, not part of the garden, but the
It's going to be pulled.
section. It is.
It's on Chapin's list. I know of
I think, yeah, that sounds right.
areas that need to be.
And there are some exciting opportunities for collaboration there. And Parks and Rec wants to put in some additional pollinator gardens out front the Western Pavilion facility there. So there'll be more on that moving forward. And I think we can also save the CVU Williston project for next time too. So
And it's not time sensitive, we can come back to
And then
you.
Also, the outline that we were working on for the website.
yeah, we'll come back to that too. I realized that just wasn't gonna fit today.
No problem.
Okay,
Let's
so-
wrap this up.
All right, so I realized this actually wasn't rocket science based on what you recommended, so I left 1 intact. 2, delete that first line, so it just starts with the applicant shall make a reasonable attempt to adopt the recommended SWHA impact mitigation measures provided by Arrowwood under WB or clearly indicate, there should be a comma there. Or clearly indicate why such measures are not applicable or not practically achievable. Voluntary adoption of recommended mitigation measures is encouraged regardless. I don't know if this is not necessary anymore, this last sentence. If we're already just stipulating
Yeah, I
the
think we
applicant-
could give them an out.
Yeah, I like that and taking that out and
What?
number 1, okay.
Oh, yeah. So, what WDB 27.581, 27.591, 27.5, 10.1, are those worth putting into the keeping in the sentence? That was a suggestion.
Not in this case. Those
Okay.
could be worth, those are the bylaws that really establish the process of mitigating impacts to SWHA. So those are actually more relevant to number 1.
Minimize,
Okay.
I was gonna say.
Then let's
I
put
see
those up.
with
there.
One, yeah, it's minimize fragmentation of forest cover and relevant habitat characteristics,
You have
minimize.
the bylaws
It's
bookmarked,
further up
don't
in the
you?
thing.
in your website.
They're already in the report.
Oh, yeah,
Minimizing,
that's right.
minimizing
Not
encroachment of
accurate.
development into core habitat and minimize disruption and fragmentation of identified corridors. So it's forest cover, core habitat, corridors are the
Right.
three. And I think they apply to 1A and B the most.
I think that is the right place to have them referenced. Thank you.
Okay, so this will read, as recommended by Airwood Environmental, the site layout shall be reconfigured to provide for a minimum 300-foot buffer between the new clearing edge and steep topographic drop off, approximately 335 feet elevation line west of the project site. By utilizing flat land close to Redmond Road and south of the currently proposed site footprint.
No comma, yeah,
Actually, maybe this should be up here.
to comply, but yeah.
West of the project site to comply with WPDB.
Um,
Something about that's awkward.
or you could just make it a separate sentence that says this will enable compliance with WDB 8.1.
Yeah, just put a period there. When in doubt, end the sentence.
Okay.
Yeah, compound sentences are,
I have a bad habit of run-on sentences.
yeah. That's how I would say it, but I don't know if others see a better phrasing.
Support.
Okay,
This will support compliance?
Yeah.
yeah, because it doesn't, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
B, we're leaving as is. If meeting this objective is not possible in practice, the applicant shall clearly and persuasively demonstrate that site conditions prevent such a reconfiguration while still providing for the widest buffer possible west of the new clearing edge.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
We want the full buffer that's recommended by the biologist. If we can't have that, we want to know what the largest buffer is.
Do we want to focus on that north-south piece because
Oh, yeah.
that Greg could say at the DRB that like, oh, well, I'm protecting the widest barrier possible.
Yeah.
East-west.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's the case, I can clarify. I mean, it's just
They'll be there.
there's no comment in the HDA about that being a concern. And in the diagram provided by the HDA, it specifically shows
Moving away from that.
like the recommended new conceptual site area and an intact corridor
And
below.
DRB will have this image.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, I do understand.
Lynn, you have a question?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
But isn't that east-west corridor larger, or am I not reading that map correctly? Then. I mean, it looks
It
like
would look slightly
pretty-
larger.
pretty wide already, like. Still sufficient.
Even if they came
Yeah.
down to the green line here, it's still, yeah, so that's what the biologist was saying was this is more passable to begin with
Yeah.
than this. Because those
And-
ravines in here.
Without the steep drop off.
Right.
Then with the steep drop off, it really narrows that north-south one even more.
Right.
Like. I felt like in my.
It seemed obvious, right?
Yeah.
Just,
Okay.
no, it seemed very obvious to me too, yeah.
Okay.
But I can provide that. I'll make sure that diagram ends up in the
Yes,
staff
perfect.
report.
Thank you.
That's recommended.
As far as the order of 2 and 3, yeah, I mean, the way that this is sort of written and seen in here, it does kind of read more like that recommendation of 3 should be like 2A. Cause it was within that list of the sort of
I think it's
recommended.
Yeah, I think it's okay for them to be, if it reassures you, I think it's okay for 2 and 3 both to refer to the mitigation measures.
Okay.
1 is being more general and
Yeah.
saying they should make reasonable attempts, and 2 is saying, or 3 is saying. But specifically regarding the visual and auditory, we expect it to be on the plan.
I mean,
Great.
it could be 2A and 2B.
Yeah.
I think the clear signal to DRB here is yes, it's gonna agree.
You think it's clear as is?
Yeah.
It's separate, okay, so maybe I'll just change with HTA recommendations. But
Cause,
just to use consistent language instead of recommended SWHA impacts.
yeah, cause the way we're using one A and one B is one A, and if not possible,
Yeah.
one B, but
Yeah.
what we're doing with 2 and 3 is we're saying 2
Mm-hmm.
and separately 3.
Maybe this is now just super redundant.
No, but I think it does help them when we're drawing
Right.
specific lines to what they're supposed to enforce.
We didn't talk much about invasives. But it sounds like they have assurances that they do an invasive management plan already. I would like to see that, maybe it's already somewhere part of this proposal, but like to do active and on-site invasive management. Throughout the property and not just on the roadway.
And should it be its own recommendation?
Right.
Due to the relatively limited or unusually limited invasives on the parcel.
Does anyone agree that that should be a recommendation, and then if it is, if we do agree, then we can work on the wordsmithing. Let's start there.
I think we are. The more that we name, the more we're sort of making 2A, if you will, or 2 kind of redundant. So I think if it's the case that we're sort of understanding that some of these aren't necessarily actionable or are just secondary, and there's only a few that we really care about, then my recommendation would actually be to get rid of 2 and to just call out the ones that I feel truly important.
Okay, I'd rather have the catch all and call out the buffer stuff, so I'm okay.
The only other thing is just that while this one is pretty discreetly actionable, they can put buffer planting on the plan. There's not necessarily any kind of standard for what invasive species management plan looks like. And so when it comes to sort of conditions and enforcement, it's kind of wishy-washy to begin with. And there's no power in the bylaw to, have post follow-up, which is kind of the most important thing. Once they get their permit and project, it's really in their hands, so they can make a plan, like that could still be a recommendation, but I think I don't necessarily know if calling it out as a specific condition would kind of help. Although I do feel that it is important.
To just have the applicant shall submit an invasive management plan?
Oh, no, I'm just saying that I do think the invasive thing was one of the higher, Aaron mentioned that as the
It
second.
also had almost no pushback from them,
Right.
whereas there are pushback on other items, so I sort of expect when the DRB says, well, what are you gonna do with the mitigating measures, they're gonna say. Well, we're gonna do an invasive management plan, not just for the project time, but also for maintenance beyond that, because we can't have them getting into our facilities. They're gonna offer that up as one of the things that they're doing, so I don't think we need to push it. I have a hard stop and I need to go, so
Okay.
I will move approval of these recommendations as drafted, if there are no changes to anybody else.
I agree, it's the major points that we've been discussing this morning, so.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thanks, Laura. All in favor? Vote aye. Aye. Great. Recommendations are approved as redrafted. Thank you, Dave, for your excellent facilitation of that meeting and these written
Kevin
recommendations.
Jerry, of course, not present for the vote.
Thank you very much.
So
Move to adjourn.
No objections.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, everyone.
Right.
Oh, and so we don't have an August meeting, there is, I won't be here, but you know, if there's anything that, yeah. You're gone the whole month, that's your big allowance.